Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we proved that this system is actually very effective for delivering us to the surface of Duna where we want to be delivered. So that is absolutely wonderful. This is also a system that is quite reusable for basically all of our modules. So I'm very pleased about that one. That's absolutely great. But now we need to get it to Duna orbit. That's going to be a little more challenging. So first things first, we are going to need to take a look at the current weight distribution here. This is the center of mass right now. This is with these tanks empty, but these tanks actually need to be full. So if we do this, now we have a problem. And that problem is we need to have our rocket, if we're going to lift it in this orientation, we need to have our rocket be pretty much right here. And the reason for that is because we can't attach things to this convertitron. I suppose we could do some shenaniganery with having an offset over here. I guess that's theoretically possible. So what that would end up looking like is we would put a cubic octagonal strut right along the bottom like this. Basically where we want the attachment point to be, right? Which is about here. Yeah, about there. And then, well, this actually needs to be angled on the bottom like that. I would actually probably have this be a modular girder segment angled on the bottom about right there. Then what we could do is we could mount a second modular girder segment right here, like that, to get us basically to this position. From there, we can mount another modular girder segment like this. And it looks like that's not quite far enough over. We can definitely adjust the positioning of this guy a little bit, have it be about there. That's a little too far. That's not far enough. Okay, so we're going to have to turn snapping off and manually place it about here or so. That would be approximately the center. Then that's going to need struts, so we would put a strut about here to here. And then probably over here to here. Here to here. And then like here to here or so. I don't know how firm that's going to be. This is already getting chaotic. So we'll put that about there. And then our delivery system. So to get this from Kerbal orbit to Duna orbit, how much do we want to budget for Delta V? Well, it's going to be interesting for sure. So I'm thinking right now that I'm going to budget overkill here. We're probably going to go for somewhere around 1,500 meters per second would be my guess. So let's go for a poodle here. And what's that going to be in thrust to weight? So we're definitely going to need to have this be in its own stage. And this is going to have to be detachable, by the way. So we're going to want to put like a decoupler here or attach it in via docking port. Yeah, that's going to need to be a thing. So we're going to put I'm going to do this via a decoupler, I think. So like a radial decoupler mounted not like that. Snapping is going to need to be on. Okay, mounted about like that. Grab this modular girder segment. That goes approximately here, like that. And we can see that we're going to need to move it a little bit. That's absolutely fine, because we want this here to be in line with this. So we're going to have to turn snapping off and position it about there or so. Okay, so how much Delta V does this mad contraption have right now? This is already a bit of a monstrosity, but I love it. So if we look into Kerbal in vacuum, we're looking at stage 2 here. This has 1,212 meters per second. That's actually fairly close. We can fill this with a little bit more fuel here, with the intention being to move this fuel down. That's actually fine. Yeah. We can have this fuel be here with the intention of moving this down as we burn this. So that'll give us a little bit more there. Okay, let's put a TD-25 decoupler here. And now we need to get this thing into Kerbal orbit. That's going to be real interesting. So we're definitely going to need to have some fuel on this. We're going to need to have something kind of like that. If we put a mainsail on this, I'm imagining this thrust to weight isn't great. And this thing is probably going to have the aerodynamics of a brick as well, so that's going to be interesting. We'll see how that goes. Let's put a mainsail right about here, and the question then, of course, is, with this being the case, in Stage 4, on Kerbal, what is the thrust to weight of this at sea level? 1.05. Okay. So that's reasonably fine. We could just use SRBs. This is already cheaper than I thought it would be, so that's not so bad. Yeah, that's actually quite cheap. So let's put on some radial decouplers. I'm going to do 2 for right now, and we'll see how that feels. We need snapping on to have the correct angling. And then we're going to do Polluxes. Although I kind of want them to be... we can just grab this and rotate it like that. Cool, that'll be fine. And then, of course, we can do hemispherical fuel tanks up top. That will give us a little bit more fuel here. Move this guy right on down to be about here. We're going to need fuel valves going like that, or rather fuel ducts. And then we're going to need some struts on this. So a strut here and a strut here. Should be reasonably fine. Okay. So what would this thrust to weight look like? So we're definitely going to need to do this. Our staging is probably a bit of a mess right now. Yeah, it definitely is. So we do that, and then this decoupler fires, and then that happens, and then all of this happens. That all looks good, actually. So that seems fine. The idea here is for this to deliver this into low Duna orbit. So the question is, do we have enough delta V here to do that? Well, thrust to weight is 1.57 at 0 altitude on this first stage. So that should be decent on the thrust to weight. Our center of mass should be reasonably balanced, despite the monstrosity that we've got going on up here. Delivering this like this is, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, this is going to have the aerodynamics of a brick. It'll be interesting to see how this flies. We're going to do a simulated launch here. Ah, too many parts. By how many? It can't be many. 259 out of 255? What parts can we cut here? We just need to cut 4 parts. We do not need quite this many struts for here. I'm going to bring this down to 2 struts. That should be enough to hold that. And similarly here, I'm going to bring this down to 2 struts. That should be enough to hold that as well, in theory. Something along the lines of that. That puts us at 255 out of 255. Okay. Simulated launch time. Let's see how badly this thing flies. Surely this is not going to fly well, right? The aerodynamics of this are going to be awful. Absolutely abysmal. Once we get out of the atmosphere, that's not a problem. So we might have to punch straight up here. Gravity turning is probably going to be interesting. I want to give it a go, though. Okay. We should connect these directly to these fuel tanks. Let's pull that back. That's definitely a problem. However, it balanced better than I thought it would, just right out of the gate there. So this connector is going to go here now, and this connector is going to go here. Okay, this is still an absolutely horrific contraption that we've devised here. I love it so much. It's so awful. It's not the worst thing I've ever made. The KSP2 monstrosity was significantly worse than this. But this is pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. Okay, we're going to put this in kill rot, and our current angling is off by 90 degrees. So that's obviously an issue. We'll have to either keep that in mind or do something about that. Perhaps put a controller up on the sky crane. That's probably not a terrible idea. For now, let's put this in kill rot and we'll go ahead and launch it. This is going to be interesting. So we're having a hard time holding attitude here. We're having a very hard time holding attitude. There's a lot of sway going on over this direction. And you can see the gimbaling trying to compensate for it, but we just don't have a strong joint here still. So that's understood. We'll need to pull that back. And what do we want to do about that? Well, we are definitely on a parts budget. So parts budget is definitely complicating things here. So first things first, I want to pop this off. And I want to put in a controller here, I feel like. We could maybe move this Probodobodyne Octo from here to being up here. Like that. I mean, it looks kind of awful, but we could definitely do that. So that'll help matters, but we still have a big joint issue here, right? So we're currently right at 255 parts. So if we want to do any additional strutting, we're going to have to remove an existing strut. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to remove these two struts here, and we're instead going to have it come from here, and I want this to be in radial symmetry. From here up to perhaps here, but perhaps all the way up over this way. I don't know that we're actually going to be able to get that to reach. We'll just strut it like this, and that should be an improvement anyway. We'll see by how much. This thing is... it's going to be exciting. So now at least we have a vertical facing setup here, right? But we know that when we are... well, can we control from a docking port that has something docked to it? That's an interesting question. That definitely seemed more rigid. Let's see here. Control from here. Yes. Okay, perfect. So that's absolutely fine. No issue there. So we'll control from here. There we go. Throttle up. And let's see how this thing flies now. It's still going to be awful, I assume. Less awful on the gimbaling. I want this to be in surface up. We didn't have smart ASS on. It default wants to head over on this 90-degree plane, which is not surprising in the slightest. And we're going to go to orbital prograde eventually, but for right now, I just want to get some altitude. Looks like it almost looks like we're overshooting back this direction in the 270 direction, doesn't it? But I don't think we are. It's already flying better than I expected. Yeah, this fuel should be empty. That's absolutely understood. So I'm thinking right now, we go straight up until the SRBs detach, and then we try to go horizontal velocity up. We don't have much horizontal speed right now. That's understood. So we would just go to orbital prograde for the moment. Oh, we're losing attitude. Okay, so an attitude loss here is spicy. I didn't do anything there. I don't think. No, we're still on surface up. So attitude loss there is spicy, but unsurprising. Although... it was actually recovered. Now, time to apoapsis is problematic, and you can see that this is definitely causing some issues over here. So we clearly need more attitude control. There's no doubt about that one. Okay, and that detachment was awful. But let's pull this back to the vehicle assembly, and let's see if we can do something kind of naive here. If we just add control surfaces out on these SRBs, would that do the trick? Holding attitude is definitely a challenge for this. We could go with, like, tail fins. We're going to have a parts budget issue here. No doubt about that. So what parts can we remove? We can remove the fuel ducts. We can manually transfer that fuel. So that's the thing that we could do. We could also upgrade the VAB, which, you know, might not be a bad idea, but we're probably going to need to at some point. But I want to see how this ends up going. So with those fins on there, we're going to set it to just straight up. I'm a little surprised we lost attitude when we did. It felt like we should... Well, actually, I think it's because of the drag offset. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the actual design of this thing, our rocket is here. We're going to have more drag on this side than we are on this side. And that was known that that would be a situation. We're just going to have to try to power through it. So we're going to be at surface up, throttle up, and let's go. But we need to pin open this tank, and then we need to pin open this tank and this tank, because we need to move this fuel right on out of here. There we go. This didn't actually fully flow out. There we go. Let's close that. It's because it transferred from here. That's fine. Okay, so that looks good. We're trying to hold this up attitude here. And we're trying to hold this until such a time as our SRBs fall off, ideally. I want to get a lot of vertical speed here. We want to punch up through the atmosphere as quickly as we can, because the atmosphere is absolutely our enemy with this thing. Drag is going to be a monster for us. So we can see that we're definitely listing off... Actually, are we listing? I think we're listing a little bit. The control surfaces are definitely attempting to help, but they're having a bit of a rough go of it. Ah, there we go. So we are having the same tumble, kind of. It came under control much more quickly this time. And we reverted back to up. That's fascinating. So we've only got a couple of seconds left on these SRBs. Our vertical speed is not as high as I would like it to be. That's for sure. So one thing we could do, let's ditch the SRBs and let's see what happens here. I'm expecting, yeah, we're going to start tumbling here. Okay. So that is, of course, mildly problematic. We'll try to bring ourselves right on back to up here. But I think what we need here is more thrust to weight, to be honest. So what that ends up meaning is that we need more of those SRBs. A little bit of gimbal gyration going on here. That's absolutely noted. I want to see how far this is going to get us, though. So we're not quite to the point where I want to go to orbital prograde yet. Actually, we're pretty close. Let's see what happens if we do this. Do we lose attitude again? Okay. So that looks pretty okay. We'll go to horizontal velocity up. Our heading is not going to be ideal here, obviously. But we are at this point suborbital, and we burned way too much fuel to get here. Our speed is very low. So that is, of course, a significant issue. At this point, at this point in our fuel, we are supposed to be fully orbital. So this should be used as the interplanetary transfer stage, not for achieving orbit. So obviously, this isn't going to do the trick. So we're going to need to pull this back to vehicle assembly. And what we're going to need here is we are going to need to probably upgrade the VAB, because we got to get these moved. So we're going to have this detach. We're going to go to 4 of them instead. That will boost up our thrust to weight significantly. And I want to move those down a little bit too. Not you. Hang on. That's not what I wanted to select. I wanted to select the decoupler. There we go. Right about there. So with 4 of those, that's reasonably fine. Let's save this, but of course we can't put this out on the pad. And if we're going to upgrade the VAB anyway, then we should probably get some external fuel ducts going here. Like that. There we go. That'll make things easier, so we don't have to worry about that. But let's get the VAB upgraded, and this, of course, means that we're probably going to have to do some contract work in order to make the money to do our actual colony. That's fine. That was always probably going to happen. So that's absolutely okay for the moment. Let's get the VAB upgraded. That's going to be pretty expensive. But now we can run this with unlimited parts. That's a big restriction lifted. So that's absolutely wonderful. I'm okay with the overall rigidity of the rocket. I don't think that the rocket needs additional rigidity. What it really needs more than anything is to just punch up through the atmosphere faster. So that seems absolutely fine. Let's put this out on the pad. And let's see how it goes with twice the number of SRBs. This should give us 2 things. A lot more control in those lower altitude sections where atmospheric effects are the most extreme. And it should punch us through those faster. And the increased airspeed will also mean that our control surfaces are more effective. And overall, this should give us a decent amount of recovery there. So let's put ourselves in surface up, and let's see how this goes. This should be significantly smoother than the last attempt. Although, with this particular contraption, I'm not sure there's a scenario where this is ever going to actually be smooth. Smooth is relative, right? But what's our thrust weight here? 1.97 already? Yeah, that's looking much better. And of course, it takes a little longer to pull this fuel out of these, but that's fine for now. So this delivery mechanism is spicy, for sure. And we can always store additional fuel up here and move it down if we need to, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that doing that can significantly change our weight balance. So that's something we need to think about. Here we can see that we actually have some speed effects picking up here. This is about the time that we would tumble previously, and I'm noting that our pitch is maxed out right now. Here's the tumble. It's in the correct direction, so that's good. Overcompensating. We are burning off a lot of our vertical speed right now. I cut the throttle on the one engine that we can cut the throttle on, but that was a bad tumble. No doubt about that. We're trying to make our way back up, but we're in a bad attitude at this point. So that's definitely a big concern. That lost us a lot of our speed buildup. We're still maxed out on our pitch and not able to get to the point where we want to be. So we're too low in the atmosphere right now. We're too low and too slow, essentially. And our inclination is very bad. And then as soon as we ditch those, that happens. Which isn't terribly surprising given how low we are at this point. So, we can pull that back, and we can continue trying to throw more power at that problem, or we can try to think about this in a bit smarter of a fashion. Well, this whole thing is designed to be unmanned, right? And we're gonna need, like, communication satellites or something, but, well, it'll be fine. We'll be able to do it pretty much. We'll definitely want to have, like, some comms on this, actually, now that I think about that. So let's make sure that we've got a decent antenna on here. I'm just going to toss that on this side to help offset this mass a little bit, but it's not going to do much. So that's definitely a thing, or rather not this mass, this drag. So we could think about ways to handle the drag out over here. We could just toss more tail fins at the problem. I don't love that as a solution, but I mean, that would help matters somewhat anyway. If we did that, let's see what that would do. More tail fins at the problem in this angling. So what I'm thinking right now is we're also going to want to have tail fins on our actual booster. So actually, let me pull this back one more time quick and do what I was just thinking about doing. So as soon as this loads in, we're going to pull this back once more, and we're going to increase our number of tail fins yet again. Because this thing is horrifically balanced, and we knew that that would be the case. It's balanced great once we get it out of the atmosphere. But in the atmosphere, it's going to be spicy, and we knew that was going to be the case. So let's take these tail fins, and I'm going to put in 4 of them here. And hopefully we don't lose them when we detach our SRBs. Fingers crossed. As long as we're not, you know, madly gyrating around, it should be theoretically fine, I would think. Okay, so let's get this thing loaded in, and let's get this one more attempt here. If this doesn't work, then I think we're going to say that control surfaces are clearly not effective, or at least in the main rocket stack are not effective. One thing I was thinking about doing was putting control surfaces out on that area that is extending out up here. That would probably have a larger effect than these. But, I don't know. It's something to think about, for sure. So we've got a lot more control surfaces down here. If we put it out here, I would have tried it by now, actually, except that this is all unmanned, and we would want to remove those before going into orbit, or rather, before going in for landing. So that's definitely a potential issue there. Keep in mind, though, we can always refuel this if we need to. We've got a Clampatron docking port junior here, so that would be fine if we wanted to send a refueling mission. Okay, so we're watching this pitch here. It's definitely creeping up, which isn't surprising. One thing we could think about is actually reducing our thrust and trying to keep our surface speed low until we get high enough in the atmosphere, rather than trying to punch through the atmosphere quickly. There you can see the pitch is getting close to bottoming out. It's not quite there yet. Hang on. I think we're through max Q. We're through max Q. Okay, beautiful. So that's fantastic. We got through the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure, and the aerodynamic pressure is now lessening. So this actually worked. I'm surprised. I'm happy, but I'm surprised. So we're going to go into orbital mode here, and we're going to go to orbit velocity up as soon as these SRBs are off. I just want to get as much vertical velocity as we can. I don't know if we're going to have a tumble once these SRBs detach. That is a concern, and we want to punch up through this atmosphere as quickly as we can. But that is also why we added in these guys down here. So SRBs are going to be off shortly. Okay, looking for a clean detach. Clean detach. We're going to orbital prograde for right now. But really, we want to be at horizontal velocity up. But I want this to be at a 90-degree heading. So we're going to have to make a little bit of correction here, it looks like. We've got a lot of... Where's this trying to go right now? We've got a lot of vertical speed, so I'm okay with our amount of vertical speed. We need to build up horizontal speed. And we're definitely starting to over-gimbal a little bit here. So I cut that down to 33%. It still feels a little over-gimbaled. I'm also thinking we don't have enough fuel in this stage to achieve orbit here. However, the aerodynamics worked. So that's great. Heading of 88 degrees is fine. This is close enough for now. So we've only got a couple hundred more meters per second, right? We need a lot of horizontal speed. But we could try to have an actual gravity turn. I don't know how that would go. It is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we can try to do a gravity turn. I think we're still going to need a little bit more oomph in this stage to deliver us to where we want to go. Or we might need to have another stage on here. That's the other question. But for now, it is time to put that cut in, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to see how this goes next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.